Hello and welcome to Howard's Cave of Wonder. I'm Chris, aka Howard Blues, welcoming you back to my cave and to my hobby journey. And if you're like me, which you might be, I live a very busy life. Most of my day is made up of making sure my kids are taken care of, going to work, dropping kids off at school and daycare, running errands, coming home, doing chores, things around the house to keep the house going. And so my hobby time is late in the evening, and it's not a lot. If I'm lucky, I might get an hour a night. And one of the things that I have found to be a challenge with that small amount of time is that this feeling of restlessness, this feeling of, why am I doing this when I should be doing that? In other words, why start this project? And if I do start that project, how do I not feel guilty about the projects I'm not doing? So, for instance, just off camera over here, I have a whole aisle of boxes of stuff that I backed on Kickstarter that are here that I need to unpack, maybe shrink down. You know, if they had multiple components, shrink them down so they all fit in one box. I have a bunch of that I need to do. But is that more important than doing some painting? Or slaving a bunch of Arkham Horror, the card game that came in? And sometimes I find that when I choose an activity, like painting, I find myself guilty that I'm not dealing with the Kickstarter boxes. Or when I'm working with the Kickstarter box, well, maybe I should take care of Arkham Horror or some other project. In other words, I got too many projects, not enough time, and I feel guilty about the things that I ignore. So how do I keep going? This isn't burnout. By no means. It's not that. It's not that I don't want a hobby or I'm burnt out from the hobby. It's that I have too much hobby. And so how do I deal with it? Part of it is motivation. To me, one of the ways that I find best to make progress is to be motivated, to have a goal. Recently, I took on a challenge of trying to paint a fire giant in 20, 30 some odd days. That was a challenge. The motivation of not disappointing my son kept me going. So deadlines can work, but deadlines have to have a meaning. If it's just an artificial deadline that I've set for myself, I'm never going to get anywhere, because it's too easy for me to just kick the football or the can down the road until I want to deal with it. So deadlines don't always work for me. But one thing that does is being inspired. Having something that's like, ooh, I gotta do, because that keeps me going. But how do you get that? How do you charge the hobby juices? How do you get them flowing? Well, here's some things that I use. Not saying this will always work for you, but it works for me. And also a couple of pitfalls that I try to avoid. So let's talk about a good, and then we'll talk about bad. So a good, for me, it sometimes is looking at things that might inspire me. So say a monster manual for a D&D game. Looking at the pages and all of that, I will see cool monsters. Well, take this thing, for instance. It's the Junker Hulk. It is just the coolest little mech made of junk that I have seen. That's a cool thing. Maybe it inspires me to paint my own thing. Sometimes that can really do it. You see something just really cool, gets you excited, and the next thing you know, you're going to paint it. Or in this case, this is from the Iron Kingdoms, War Machine and Hordes. Many of these figures are stuff that I own, like Gorax here. I have a Gorax model. Cool. Maybe looking at this picture or reading the description gets me excited about that model and makes me want to paint it. That's one way. Now, I will say, as much as that works, one thing that I tend to avoid, so I gave you a way to charge, let me give you a pitfall, or at least one of mine. One of my pitfalls, looking at new models. Looking at new models is a terrible thing to do for me, because when I look at new models, sure, I see a new model. I'm like, gosh, I want to do that. I want to paint that. I want to, all the things I could do with it. It's great. The problem is then I buy the model. And then I have to wait for the model to get here. And by the time it gets here, maybe I'm not as, inspired by it. I subscribe to the War Machine mini crate. These are fun. But I have found I don't tend to kind of watch to see what's coming. Like, I don't really know what's in this thing that I'm opening right here as I record this. This is the first time looking at it. I try to avoid the previews and things because, again, it gets that pulse of like, ooh, I'm excited about that. I might not then want to necessarily go after it right away. So let's take a look at this thing. Okay, kind of cool. He's clearly one of their hog guys, kind of in a piratey theme. He's even got a little anchor on the back, the treasure chest. Okay, that can be a cool paint job. And that's the thing that's exciting and could get me excited about it. So getting a model like that, sure. Buying a model, not so much. That's a great way to just add to the pile of opportunity. For those who maybe are new, I don't call all of my gray plastic the pile of shame. The pile of shame is this up here. The projects I've started that I need to finish. I'll get to them. So that's one way. Another way that sometimes inspires me is through, surprisingly, video games. It's hard to imagine that video games might be a thing that motivates one to get excited, but it can be. For instance, one of my favorite things to watch is I love watching streamers who play Total War, especially Total War Warhammer. Why? It's an amazing game. It's these massive battles. It's in this great fantasy universe. It's a really cool thing. It gets me excited about building armies. I don't know why. It triggers that feel, that desire to open something up and to build an army and paint it and have my own battles. Not that I have anybody to play Warhammer. Plus, Warhammer can be pricey to get into, and since I don't have a ready opponent, it just doesn't make a lot of sense for me to get into Warhammer. But it can inspire me to play some of their offshoot games, like Warhammer Underworlds. I've started picking this up recently, and again, it's because I've been watching these Total War videos and seeing these things and like, that's kind of cool. Those monsters are kind of interesting. That thing is kind of cool. Maybe I should get that. Again, there's a danger to that because sometimes you go on and you go searching for things and then you buy more models and they're coming and yeah. So you have to be careful with it. But I do find that watching gameplay, things like that just get me energized is a great way to just get me into wanting to hobby. In this case, it might be that all I really have time for is just assembling these guys. I can still play the game if I have got them assembled, but it might inspire me to, okay, I've got them assembled. Maybe I should paint them right away. And that's the beauty of some of those things. One of the other things that tends to work for me is watching painting videos. Now, I will say, you got to find the right ones. And I say that because sometimes you watch amazing painting videos done by true masters, and they're cool. You can learn some really amazing stuff. But at the same time, especially when I was beginning, some of that left me in this whole, like, I'm not that good. I'm not that skilled. I can't do this. It made me feel worse about my paint job, and therefore, it might demotivate me to paint. But the thing about it is you find the right people who are maybe just doing something fun or silly, like, watch us paint this army in 36 hours. Okay. You know that it's not going to be like Golden Demon winning painting. But seeing them paint and engage in their hobby can be quite the motivator. So finding those sorts of things to me works. Finding, as I said, that world-class stuff, it really makes it hard. In fact, I remember a time when just the idea of layering, like, starting with your shade and then mixing in a little, kind of the mid-tone, and kind of mixing a couple drops and then painting that in, and then mixing a couple more drops and then painting in, and then, adding in, just kind of that layering and blending up. I remember listening to people talking about layering and just going, I don't got time for that. I'm a base coat, slap on the wash, throw on a highlight, done kind of painter. That's what I can do. And now I have found that rarely do I like the use of a wash, and I would rather sit and kind of blend things up and then maybe glaze it to smooth out those transitions. Something that early Howard, when I began painting, that's too fancy. Too fancy here. I'm not that good. And I find myself, and it's not to say that I'm an amazing painter, but I've developed the skills and I've gotten better. And so you have to find that right balance. Watching somebody who is just amazing can be a bit demoralizing, unless you really view it as like, one day I will reach that level, and maybe use it as a motivation to keep practicing. Then it can be a good thing. But I do remember watching some of that stuff or listening to people talk and really be down on myself on some of that. Hi, future Howard, cutting into past Howard, because I'm sitting here doing some editing and on this video, and I realized that there's another thing that motivates me. And even though my voice is a little scratchy, I should hop in and just say, one of the other things that I found that has been getting me energized to sit down here and do my hobby is the fact that I now have this kind of deadline put on myself from having this YouTube channel and trying to create content. Not that everything in my hobby needs to be content related, but the idea that I've set in my mind that I'm going to have something every other week to present as content and to try and make it something hobby related means I'm thinking about my hobby and what I could do, what I could share, and what might be interesting and all of that. And so sometimes just having that, but I know not everybody has a YouTube channel, and that's probably why I didn't think about it or say it during my initial kind of run through of what gets me energized to hobby. But it's one of those I was thinking about as I was sitting here editing, that part of why I've been doing so much hobbying lately is I have this deadline of producing. So I thought I'd add that one in there. Anyway, back to me in the past, and I gotta get back to editing. There you go. I know this was a short video, and it was a quick video, and if you're watching this, it's probably because I'm on hiatus, and we've welcomed our third child into the world, and I need to cover a week and such, and this seemed like an easy and fun topic. At least it was one that I was thinking about as I hit some of that restlessness and how do I get motivated and feeling stressed. And trust me, I've had those nights where I fail. I come down here. I've even had nights where I've had like 2 hours. And my wife's like, you can go hobby. You have time, go hobby. And I come down here and I putz around in the cave, and I do a few things here and I do a few things there. But then I just leave frustrated because I didn't really do anything. So I'm hoping that by maybe sharing some of this and reminding myself that there are some things that can get me into that feel and into that rhythm, then maybe it helps some of you out. So hopefully you found this helpful. Hopefully you found it a little insightful. Hopefully you maybe laughed a little bit. Maybe. It's okay if you didn't. And hopefully if you made it all the way here to the end and enjoyed the video, you'll think about subscribing. Join all of us down here in the cave on our hobby journeys. And hey, if you have a great either pitfall, something that keeps you from getting into the hobby or just stops you, or even a great thing to inspire and help somebody get motivated to do their hobby, hey, share them in the comments. Love to hear some other ideas on this. And yeah, that really wraps us up. Thank you for tuning in. Greatly appreciate it. And hopefully we'll catch you down here in the cave next time. Night, everybody.